I came to, I remember going up in the air, but I don't remember coming down. And when I came to, you know, the only thing I could move was my right arm. So I thought, what am I doing here? The other guys were in pieces, you know. I thought, I'll get back to the line. So I started dragging myself with my right arm, pulling myself on grass or whatever I could reach, rock. And when I started down that hill, then I don't remember. And I thought I got back, and I never got back. Because this corpsman, when he come and met me here, that morning, we got new corpsmen. And this officer we had left said, you know, Pete, we got 2 new corpsmen. And he mentioned names. One was a Spanish name, and the other one was German. So when I saw this guy, he says, he turned me over. He says, your eyes rolled up and looked at him. I looked at him, you know, and he was blonde, fair complected, blue eyed, so I knew he was German. So I says to him, Bob Kessler, and he says, he nodded yes. He says, then you went into a coma. He says, everything was already, the wounded were already taken out, you know, and they had no way to get me out, he said. He says, you were in front of the line. And he says, so I stopped the tank, put you on a tank. And that's the way they got me. The hospital was about 7 miles away, and 10 hospital. And they declared me dead. So they put me with dead guys. You know, at night, I could see the stars. And I wondered, where am I, you know? Pretty soon I saw a light, a flashlight off to my right. And as they got closer, I heard the voices. I thought, holy mackerel, that's the bearing detail. I better let them know I'm alive. But I couldn't do anything. When they got to me, I guess this guy was squatted down beside me. I could still see the stars, and he says, hey doc, this guy's still warm. I thought, at least they know I'm alive. But I don't remember him moving me, but I remember when they had me on the operating table, and that big light, you know, and I saw this hand coming, ether, and it got to this. It got within a foot of me, and I don't remember anything. Next time I came to, I'm in this tent hospital, and I'm completely out of it. I mean, paralyzed. But I could hear and I could think. My mind was clear. And the ward doctor was talking to the head doctor. He was down at the foot of my bed, my cot. I was on a cot with holes in it, catching everything. No mattress or nothing. And he says, Sergeant Athans won't be with us by morning. And I thought, this guy's crazy. I ain't dying. Yeah. And the next time I remember, they moved me out, put me on a hospital ship. And
do you remember what ship that was?
No.
No.
All I remember, I came to, and they were redressing me, you know, all the wounds and that, except the cast, they didn't change them. And I don't know what ship it was on.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then, next time I came to, I was in,
Was it in,
there was another island that the 2nd Marine Division took.
okay.
I had trouble with names.
I can't even remember it myself.
Anyhow, it was that's where all the weather starts from. You know, our winds all start from there, for the whole world. And I'll think of the name in a minute. So they were operating on me, and I remember this. They carried me out, and I could feel the heat from the sun. I don't remember when they got me in the surgery, and then they got me back, but when I came to the next time, there was a Quonset hospital. And then they moved me again to a place by the name of Kwajalein.
Kwajalein, yeah.
And that was an army hospital. And I came to in there, and I hear these guys screaming and yelling, you know, and some guys get brain injuries, you know, and they don't know. Next time I came to, I was now back to Pearl Harbor. I came to and there was a window next to me. And I'm down in the cellar, you know, the bottom. That's what they called, in them days, we called it, now I'm
It's
thinking.
the death ward.
The death ward, yeah. It was experimental, these guys can't live, experiment on them. And that's what they were doing on me, experimenting. Yeah. And I even overcame them. They couldn't kill me. I died twice officially though.
The Japanese
I was
couldn't
declared
kill you.
dead twice. At Pearl Harbor I was declared dead. And they took me to their, they were getting ready to box me to send my body home. And I moved evidently. Because when I came to, I used to see the ceilings only. And you know, and I noticed the blocks up there were a different shape, you know. And when the nurse came in, I says to her, "How come you moved me?" She says, "You died on us." But you know, that's when they try to regulate my heart. I remember that. And this doctors, they count my ribs here. And the needle, I couldn't feel it, but I hear it. Crunch, crunch, crunch going through the tissue. And then I don't remember anything. Well, they stopped my heart. It was beating too fast. They were trying to regulate it, and they couldn't start it. So they put me in the morgue. And then I moved, and they took me back to the ward and put me in a different room, you know. And that's the way I realized it. So from there, they were going to put me on a plane to send me back to the United States to Oakland Receiving Hospital. Bad move, because I'm not supposed to be on a plane. I had too much scar tissue and too many openings. The pressure would kill me. To this day, I'm not allowed to go on an airplane. The pressure would kill me. And the minute the plane started to take off, they put me on the floor because I had a lot of things going in me and regulating me. And it was, I remember, two rows, you know, of cots, you know, on a wall on this plane. But I was in the middle on the floor. And the minute things were going wrong, the doctor says, "Tell the pilot to get it down close to sea level." Because he realized, you know, the pressure was getting me. And then he got me there when I came to an Oakland Receiving Hospital. And there they ship you to a hospital as close as they can get to your home that can do the surgery. And I hear these two doctors talking. And this one doctor says, "You know, Sergeant Athans should be going to the, what was the name of the Navy hospital in Washington, D.C.?
Bethesda.
Bethesda." And this other doctor says, "Yeah, but this other guy's got priority." And this doctor says to him, "He's a hypochondriac." I heard that. Next time I came to, I was in a train. They put me through the window. And they took me to Astoria, Oregon. And there I got some good work, good operations, you know. And, but still flat on my back till all these bones fused back together by themselves. See, where the shell hit me, it took half of my ilium of the hip, and the rest was shattered. And it was a big hole. And, so they couldn't give me an artificial hip because the muscle's missing. And so I had to lay flat, and then the injuries I had on my back till they fused. They self-fused. Now my neck was broke. And it's not too good now. Whew, I got problems. And I need 4 operations, but I'm not doing them. Because I'd either be paralyzed from the neck down or from the hips down. And I had paralysis, and I don't want to be that way. I'd be an invalid. No way. So anyhow, that hospital was pretty good. And then when they had me in a urology ward then, I got shot all over. The machine gun hit me there. Right where your penis goes in your body. And then the machine gun was so distant, maybe 1,200 yards, it had no power. it hit my spine and bounced around inside, four bullets. And it hit me right here. And when we was going to set up this OP in Okinawa, so it tore everything apart. I had shrapnel all over.
When was this? When were you wounded?
On Okinawa,
Yeah,
May
when?
5th,
May 5th.
yeah, 1945. And, yeah, but I made it, because the thing that saved me, I never got scared. And I never went in shock. And that's what that foreman even said. He says, of all the guys he picked up, Bob Kessler, he says, you were the only one. You even smiled. You never made a sound. Never moaned. And I can take pain to a degree, you know. And I had to live with it, even when I got out. When I finally got out of the hospital, it was December of '47. And I had a hip brace. They told me I'd never get rid of it. I had 5 major nerve injuries. See, the neck, the lower part of the spine, names, like I said. And then,
Lumbar.
yeah, the lumbar, and then the 2 perineal nerves and the sciatic nerve from the buttocks up to the knee, that was torn to pieces. And I had operations on them 3. Now, they told me I'd never be able to get rid of the hip brace. But I did. It took me a lot of years. So I learned to give myself, you know, physiotherapy. I knew this doctor, and he was a physiotherapist. Told me what kind of exercise to do, and she said, walking. He says, walking. So I start walking at night. I was too proud to walk in the daytime. I didn't walk a straight line, and I limped. So at night, and the air's clear at night, you know. So I'd start walking, and I'd try to walk a block and sit down to rest. And I'd unlock my brace and see if I could lock my knee. I got rid of the hip brace. I got down to a drop foot brace after about 6 years. And then about, I think it was 1964, I got rid of the drop foot brace. I still have drop foot, but I can control it. And, you know, I walk different every day, but still walking. And you gotta walk. You gotta move. And one time, I started losing my rhythm in my heart. Just 5 beats, in 1 minute. 5 beats. So I thought, well, I'm not going to the hospital. I'll do it myself. Because I went to the library and learned about medicine too. So I started speed walking. After 9 months, I got all the rhythm back. So I kept walking after that, 3 miles, but not speed walking. And to this day, I try to walk. Now, I'm just starting to walk again after I had an episode where I run out of blood. Didn't know it. And then finally, I had a whiteout, like a blackout, all of a sudden, man. So I went to the hospital, and they told me, you should have been dead. You haven't got no blood in you. Like 4.5 units I had left in my body, and you're supposed to have 14, a male. So they start pumping me up with blood. And I was losing weight at that time, and I couldn't figure out why I'm losing weight. I even ate more, didn't help, until that whiteout. And then, now, I'm recovering again, I'm walking. Started out walking half a mile, then at the mall, a mile. So I got up to 2.5 once, but I vary every day. Like today, I can't feel my right leg right, and I'm not walking right. So I make it slow, 1 mile takes me about 25 minutes, and it should take under 15 minutes. And, but you got to do it yourself, you know, and you learn. And, the doctors can't believe that I get along like I do with all the injuries I've got, and I'm living. I look healthy, don't I?
Yes, you do. Yeah. You certainly do.
Yeah. See, life is funny.
Yes.
You got to take what happens, you know, and you got to accept it. And you don't want to ever give up. I talked to all my friends, you know, guys from the Second World War that made it, you know. Some had a lot of wounds, you know. And I help them. I tell them when they got to go to a doctor, and what kind of a doctor. Tell them. And try to help them.
Do you belong to any veterans groups? Any?
Yeah, DAV, but they can't do nothing for you. You got to do it yourself. Yeah.
Excuse me, Pete, do you know where I'm looking all over the stuff that we prepared for Tom, you know?
I have it right here. You gave it to me
Oh, I
last time I
did?
was here. Yes, you did.
Oh, okay, great.
The copy machine got the first page, but it's okay.
Okay, because I couldn't remember some of the dates filling this form.
See, when Kessler came,
Mhm.
you read that.
Yeah, I read that
Well,
article. Yes.
See, he told it for what he knew, what he learned about me, you know. And, but you know what? I was in touch with McReynolds, and he was my company. And every year, this guy McReynolds on Palau, you know, he got wounded on the left side. His arm and leg were torn to pieces. And so he's laying there, and our corpsman got killed. And that's when, you know, we lost 2,000 in the water, and we lost 2,000 the first day. We're down to 6,000. We're disorganized. And I saw him laying, and one platoon at a time relieves the other, and you get reorganized when you lose men. And as we're going up, I see him laying there, so I told this Snowden, the guy you mentioned, he was a squad leader. I told him, Snowden, you know where we're going? I'll catch up with you. And I went over and put tourniquets on this guy, carried him back to the beach, and dug a foxhole for him. And I says to him, you know, long side. Yeah. And put his rifle, he had a rifle. I said, you'll be able to use this. Tonight you're going to have to protect yourself. I says, I'll send all the wounded crawling and walking back here and build a perimeter defense right back to the ocean. Because tonight yous are going to have to protect yourselves. And you know, it was rough that first day. We lost too many guys.
It was against Marine Corps policy, wasn't it, to
Yeah,
help the wounded?
right. Yeah. But I got back up there before he had to relieve the other platoon. And I know, sometimes you do things against policy.
Things you have to.
Yeah. So this guy here, guess what? A year and a half later, now when I'm going through the hospitals, I get to Astoria, Oregon, and I'm in this room, and I hear the nurse talking to somebody, and she called him Mac. And I heard him respond, and I thought, geez, I recognize that voice. So when she came in, I says to her, is that guy, is his name McReynolds? And he heard me. And he come in, first he didn't recognize me, because from 200 pounds, I was down to 90 pounds, skin and bones. And then he recognized me. Now that guy communicated with me after we got out. He got out of the hospital first, and I went another year and a half before I got out. And around Christmas, he'd call me up. And he'd tell me of all the guys, Edson's, Raiders, you know, who were left. And Edson Raider, you know, Colonel Edson wrote a book. And he said at the end of the Okinawa, actually there was only 3 officers that never got wounded, and 17 enlisted personnel, all wounded, that was left. And that was in Edson's book. And so this McReynolds would tell me, he says, well, right now there's only 4 of us, and then pretty soon we got down, he says, you know, Pete, there's only 3 of us left. He says, you, me, and Colonel Edson. Well, Lieutenant Colonel, but he became a general,
Yeah.
see? And so then all of a sudden he don't call me. I used to call him around June or July. He called me around Christmas, right after. And then disconnected was the phone. So I told the operator in Taunton, Oregon, is there any other McReynolds there? And she says, 3 listings. I says, well, get me in touch with each one of them. And I'd ask them if they knew. Now I can't think of his first name. McReynolds. I forgot his first name. And they didn't even know him. Now see, he became sterile. You know, he didn't handle family. He was married, his wife died. So he must have died. That was either 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And he told me that last time. He says, there's only 3 of us left. You, me, and Colonel Edson.
Was it Colonel Walt?
Oh, Walt.
Colonel Walt.
Colonel Walt. Yeah. And so I tried all 3 families. Nobody knew him. Now, isn't that odd? Tualatin is a suburb of Portland. And you know, it can't be too big a community. Yet nobody knew him. I guess, you know, he became within himself, you know. He and his wife didn't have children. So in his condition, I could understand. Maybe he didn't go partying, he didn't go out, you know, drinking or anything. So nobody knew of him, really. That's what I'm determining, you know. And he couldn't travel. I remember he had the problem I got. I can't travel. I can't even go by plane. And with a car, I can go maybe 20 miles. It's harmful for me. I got wires inside of me, you know. Bad places. And, so I don't get out of Stark County.
Sometimes there's enough here.
Yeah.
The weather changes. If you don't like it, give it a few
Yeah,
months.
now, you know, weather's starting to affect me bad, winter.
Yeah.
And I'm developing on top of it, you know, arthritis.
Yeah.
I got osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. So I like autumn the best. Autumn is good for me. But that's the story. It's something.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Could you just for future editing purposes just state your name as
Peter Athans. I was in the 1st Marine Division, Edson's Raiders, Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marine Division. 5th Regiment, I left that out.
we'll get that all in there. And you were born here in
I
Canada?
was born here, yeah, February 11th, 1924. Lived here. Once I got out of the Marine Corps, I lived here.
When did you enlist in the Marine Corps?
In 1942. And, yeah,
What was your military occupation as a Marine?
occupation.
Yeah,
Well,
your military occupation. What was your main duty assignments as a Marine?
Well, I was head of the mortar platoon. I also was a rifle platoon, and then Lieutenant Colonel Walt, you know, after Palau, we got new officers. We lost a lot of guys at Palau, and we got replacements. And even our officers got killed, and we get new officers. And so he says to this guy, they made a captain out of him, and they told him, take Sergeant Athans off the rifle platoon, put him in the mortar platoon. He says, he fires them. He says, he teaches them. And he says, nobody's allowed to fire over our battalion unless he does the firing. And, you know, that came from previous experiences, you know. Yeah. I was good in math, and I could do everything in my head real fast. I didn't need a pencil and paper. Yeah, I had some arguments with some officers, you know, when they were teaching me. We're on a range, you know, aboard a platoon. So we're firing, and the ranges are marked. And this officer says, the range cards are wrong. We're not hitting the target. I told him, wrong, the range cards aren't wrong. We're on a higher level. We're on a cliff line. And you know what? A mortar doesn't come straight down. The momentum is forward, it's coming at about 10 degrees. We're going long over the targets. He says, you're gonna have to prove it. I said, how am I gonna prove it? He says, with paper. So I'm thinking all the math I had and that, you know, formulas to make it possible. It took me all day, because I was away from it, you know. So then he took me to a artillery officer, and he was a colonel. And he told him, and you know, the colonel says he's right. See, the mortar is actually a high-angle fire weapon. You know, artillery isn't exactly long range. You know, it goes at an arc, whereas a mortar can go straight up and almost straight down, and it's accurate. And you know, it's anti-personnel. If a mortar hit right in here, it wouldn't hurt that drum, but it breaks at 30 degrees. It does a lot of damage to personnel. See, whereas an artillery shell goes, it might even go into the ground for 5 feet before it explodes. It makes a big hole. So against personnel, the mortar killed in the Pacific more, the Japs mortars and our mortars, than any other weapon. You can't hear it coming unless it's real damp. And the last minute you'll hear, it's on. Artillery you hear coming. And you get used to it, and you know if it's going to hit short, long, or close to you. It's a funny thing how you learn. You know? So I did a lot of firing, you know, of weapons.
Where did you go to basic training?
San Diego.
Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego?
Yeah, and then the advance was
Camp Pendleton?
Camp Pendleton.
After your advanced training, where'd you go? Where was your first assignment after that? Or first destination for your unit, the unit here?
Joined the Raider Battalion.
And where were they at the time?
They came through the Panama Canal and
Okay.
stopped in San Diego.
Stopped in San Diego, you met them in San Diego.
I was the only replacement. The only guy.
And when did you join them? When did you meet up with them finally? Was it 1943?
42.
42?
Yeah.
Well, late 42 then? Yeah.
Summer.
Okay, summer 42.
And yeah.
And then where was your first, where did your first campaign take place? Where was the first engagement you were involved in?
That island that I was talking about, and I can't remember the name.
Was it New Britain?
Well, no, before that, New Guinea, this island, and then Cape Gloucester, and then some small things, you know, small places. Then we went to the Russells. From the Russells, we went to Palau.
Palau. Yeah.
See how I lose names? Wow.
It happens.
Yeah, I know.
I still,
When you get old.
Yeah.
I'm 81.
I forget things, so I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. These are things I'm gonna try to trace a little bit. Is find those names so that we can, and then I'll use my voiceover as far as when we do the edited version
Okay.
of where you're kind of try to follow your
Can I
route.
get you a
there.
Coke or tea or something? What
So,
would you like, a
I would like
beer?
I would like a glass of water. If that
Water?
would be
Would you
possible.
like a beer or Coke?
Oh, not a beer. A Coke would be fine, ma'am.
It's decaf.
Water would be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we could take a little break here.
Okay, we can do that.
This thing on?
Now it is.
We want to get this story.
If you
And,
would.
so, you know, as a small kid, I'd go in the store and clean, you know, sweep, dust, stock, you know, and I'd hear these stories. Now I wasn't allowed to talk. So I'd hear all these stories, and so I thought, you know, when I grow up, I'm not going to get in that position. Anybody that had credit, you know, they owned on their houses, they lost their homes, they lost everything in the Depression. I started doing odd jobs, cutting grass for people, 25 cents. I did a good job. Do everything. I had the equipment in that. I'd improve their yard for 25 cents. And then I started getting into, as I got older, bigger jobs. I cleaned walls, painted, I did everything. I learned from my mother, helping her in the house, you know. And I'd save my money. I'd give half to my mother, and I banked half. When the banks opened up, see, the banks closed during the Depression. So I went and opened up 2 banks. I'd save, you know, 25, 50 cents, 75. Then I even made jobs. I made, when I got older, I guess I was about 11 years old. And I thought, you know what? I ought to start a vegetable route in the summer when I'm not going to school. So I found this Shivers, a guy that didn't have a job, and he had a car. I gotta have a car. So I told him, I'll give you, I think it was $5 for the use of your car. I'll get a trailer, put a hitch on your trailer, and a 4-wheel trailer, and we'll go to Hartfield early in the morning, get all the produce, and we rented a garage by his neighborhood, a 4-stall garage. And my father had extra scales and sacks and everything, and we'd take the stuff in there, weigh them, get them ready, and I started a route. Now the first year I didn't really make money, and I eliminated people, and then gradually, the second year, I started making like $1 a day for all that work. The third year, I start making some money now. And I even bought them for canning. I even went into that. Anything you want to can, I'll get you cheaper than anybody in the United States. And I did. And I knew all the farmers up around Hartfield. I got acquainted. So you know what? I started making $5 a day. And I'd be done at 12 o'clock, because, you know, once the weather got hot, you can't be carrying vegetables around. And I had this guy dropping off 2 half-a-bushel baskets at every block. And I didn't have every customer. In one block, I might only have 3. And I went by my watch. I started my first customer at 8 o'clock. Second one, depending how far I had to walk, might be 10 after. Next one, maybe 20 after. And you know, pretty soon, man, I had customers you wouldn't believe. Bought everything from me. And I was always punctual. And if they weighed the stuff, I always had extra. Never under. And after about 5 years, I was making big money. And at 12 o'clock, I was done. So I gave that up, because now my father used to say, in this country you got to have 3 trades. So I figured I'd better learn a trade. And it was a neighbor nearby, he had a machine shop. So I'd go in there, his name was Neville. So I'd go in there and talk to him, and I'd see what he was doing. And he could make anything there was on a lathe. So pretty soon, you know, he'd let me, after you set the machine up, to run it, which isn't hard. He set it up. And then pretty soon I learned, and he taught me. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to take it in night school. I was going to elementary school, and I was about a 6th grader. So I paid the Board of Education and went to Timpkin. They just opened up Timpkin High School as a vocational school. So I'd go there for a class, you know, lathe work. And once you learn a lathe, you can operate any machinery there is. And then my first job I applied for was a Timpkin roller bearing. It was 1941, June. And I got the job there, and it was only going to be temporary, because I was going to go in some kind of business, but I didn't know what. I didn't want to go into the grocery business, because my father worked how many hours? Whew, like 14, 16 hours a day. And So I get this job, and they just bought milk core steel, because the war was starting in Europe, you know, and we were helping Britain and Russia against the Germans, right? So we're making things for them. So I get down there and I get the job in the morning. Being young, you know, what did I know? I didn't think, you know. And they transferred 2 guys doing my job in a second and third shift. It didn't dawn on me, these guys got seniority. I had no seniority, and they put me on the first shift. And they paid you every 2 weeks. So I'd do my work, make sure everything's running right, and there were automatics with women just feeding them. So I'd go in and get my check late, put it in my pocket when I was getting ready to go, and I'll leave. And then I noticed something. On the second time I got my check, you look at the next check, and they were open checks. And it was a guy that came in on the second shift, didn't know the work. And he made twice as much as me. So I tapped the foreman on the shoulder. I says, "Did you see that check over there? When I come in tomorrow, I make that much or I don't work." Them 2 guys didn't know how to repair a lathe if it broke down. They could sharpen tools and that, but they couldn't repair it. And yet they were making twice as much as me. All I want to do is make as much as they're making, right? And I'd even go in early. Mine was a salary. I'd go 4 hours early sometime because I get up early in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'd jog down there and go to work. Working the other guy's shift, repairing what he couldn't do. I didn't get paid for it. So now I thought, you know what, from now on in these shops, you only get paid for what you're told to do. I'm only going to do what they tell me. So when he didn't give me the raise, here's what he said to me. He says, well, I told him I quit. He says, I'll see that you won't get a job no place in the United States. I says to him, it just come out of me. I didn't think of what I was going to do. I said, call Hercules Motors and tell them to expect me. So I jogged down there, and you know what? Security down there, they were building a Marauder, and couldn't get in. I didn't know nobody. So there was a restaurant right across from the main gate, so I went in there and got a cup of coffee, and I'd see somebody coming out, I'd run out and ask them, do you know who does the hiring here? Do you know anybody there? No. About noon, a guy gave me a name. Now I couldn't do it at that gate, so I went to the back with the trains come in. And I told them 2 guys, the 2 security guys, I got an appointment with this guy. So they took me in, and it was the toughest test I ever took. Application for a job, 12 pages. So I filled it out, and the secretary says, there was a little room, you know, go sit in there. I sat there, and pretty soon a guy called my name out. And I made my mind up now, I'm only going to do what I'm told, right? From now on, that's what you get paid for. So this guy started taking me on a tour of the plant. And I thought, I wonder what he's doing here. I wonder why he's doing this, you know. But I'm not saying much. He'd ask me a question once in a while. Get done, he says, okay, you come to work tonight at 11 o'clock, midnight, you know. I thought, well, this makes sense. I ain't got no seniority, right? So I get there, they give me a number to report to. I get down there, I punch my card, it was there. I go in, I ask everybody, where's this place at? Nobody knew. Pretty soon everybody's working and I'm wandering around trying to find this place. And here comes a security guy and he's got to punch the clocks so they know he's working, you know. I says to him, where's this place at? He says, follow me. So I had to follow him for a while and he goes into the assembly room where they assemble. And there was a little office. And they had a number there. And that was the number I was supposed to report to, I thought. So I go in, there's nobody there. There's a desk, a swivel chair, and 2 other chairs. So I'm standing there waiting. All day, all night. Nobody shows up. I thought, that guy's supposed to put me on a job, you know, assign me to a job, but he didn't show up. So I did what I was told. I punched out, There you get paid every 7 days. I pulled my card out and there was a check there, and I haven't done work anyway yet, you know. And I was making 5 times more than I was making down there at Tipton when I was working. I thought, well, when they find out, I'll have to turn this check back in. On the 10th day, the phone rang. Now I got brave. I'd go up to the square, buy all the papers. I'm waiting for this guy to show up, right? To assign me. I'd read the papers all night. It's hard to sit there and not do anything. The phone rang, and it kept ringing and ringing. I thought, where is this guy? He never shows up. I picked up the phone, and the voice on the other side says, come to the manifold department, and hung up. So I thought, now what am I going to do? So I walked down there, you know. I get to the manifold department, and the foreman saw me coming. And he figured I was the right guy. He says, and there was a bunch of guys around the radio drill, right? He tore the gears in them. And he says, get going, these guys are on piecework. I says to him, get going, these guys are on piecework. So I called him aside and told him what happened. 10 days, nothing happened. And he laughed. He says, you're the safety inspector. Yeah. So I calls down to the machine shop, you know. They send guys up, take it apart, and then when they put it back together, I have to run the first piece, see? Whoever's running it sets it up with a jig, and I run it for safety. Make sure the belts are tightened and everything, you know. For 10 days, I didn't know my job. So I started getting pretty loose now with the foreman, you know, and I talked to him, and I didn't like loafing. So I'd tell this guard that was right outside my door, I says, I'm in the manifold department. If that phone rings, tell them to call manifold. So I'd go down there, and if somebody was missing or sick, I'd do their job. Because, boy, you know what? 8 hours doesn't move if you're not doing anything.
Now, Hercules is where you met some Marines.
Right. They were in transport department. And that's where Walt was.
Colonel Walt?
Yeah, he was there. And I met the guy, I forget his name, a red-headed guy. And I wound up in the same company with him. But he had experience in that.
And that's why you chose the Marine Corps when you enlisted.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Influenced me.
Now you had 2 brothers,
Yes.
and they were both in the service. Which ones?
One was, the older one was in the Army, and the younger one in the Air Force.
And your younger brother was John,
Yes,
and
Tom was the older.
Tom was the older one.
Yeah. And we covered the 3 branches.
John never went to combat.
No,
he did.
by the time he got his training, he was in the, what they call them, a Liberator?
Yeah, the
big air-
B-24s.
B-24s.
Yeah, B-24.
And they were in Walla Walla, Washington. And they were getting ready to go to the Pacific, but the war ended. Yeah.
And
So that's when I came to in that hospital, when I found out where I'm at, you know. I thought, geez, my brother's at Walla Walla. How far is Walla Walla? I had asked the nurse. And it wasn't too far. It was like 100 miles. So I says, get me a phone. So I called up there and got in touch with him. He says, I'll be down to see you this weekend. And now he's, you know, a young, you know how them young guys are. They get their wings and that, and oh, they're pilots, right? So he comes down, and they're getting ready to operate on me, and they move surgery in my room because he can't move me. And I said, John, get out of here. He says, I can take it. I says, yeah? You know what happened? When the doctors start cutting me, he turned white as a sheet. And I says to the nurse, my brother, they took him and put him in bed in another room. Yeah.
Your brother Tom, he was in the Army. He was in the European theater.
Yeah, European.
Did he serve in France or?
Yeah, France, Germany. He was in the Battle of the Bulge, and you know, he didn't get shot, but he got frostbite, you know, froze to the ground in the Battle of the Bulge. Yeah. Yeah, he was a violinist, and all of a sudden,
Oh, yeah, you were telling me that.
Yeah, his fingers were that much longer, his left hand,
Mhm.
and, what's his name? The violinist,
Yes,
Heifetz. He told him when he was a young kid, you're one of the 5 best violinists of young kids, you know. And now he can't play. He got frostbite, and he can't play. He plays for himself. He goes in the basement and plays for himself, but he can't play.
Is your brother Tom still alive? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Your
Yeah.
brother John passed.
Yes. And there's different ways, you know. The service during the war can ruin you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get killed, you get wounded, or you lose the time. See, some of the guys that didn't get wounded, they come out, supposedly their jobs were guaranteed, and they didn't get them back. See?
Now, you were extremely resourceful.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can, just tell from your experiences prior to going into the service.
Yeah.
I had asked you when I spoke to you last time about the food, and you had mentioned a little story about how you'd come across some Japanese rations.
Oh, yeah.
Share that story with me again. That
You
was,
want me to share it?
I like that one.
Yes, one guy, he was a guy that later, everybody thought he was a coward, but he wasn't. He volunteered for all the bad things, you know. So he says to me, Pete, you know what? He was in Cape Gloucester. He says, you know, the Japs have places in the jungle with munitions, with food. He says, let's go try to, we didn't have no food, right? He says, let's go tonight and try to find one. So we went. So we going through the jungle, you know, and we came onto it. And they were stacked up in the jungle. So he boosted me up and I got on top. He got the knife out and opened them up. Cases with thick wood, you know, and then on the inside, you know how a sardine can is? Only big cans to waterproof them against the weather. And so I opened it up, and there was big cans, round cans in there. So I threw him one, he put it in his pack, I put one in mine. So I jumped across the next row, opened up, and it was little, like, what do they call them? Alka-Seltzers. Bottles, you know, cans. No, paper.
Tubes.
Yeah, tubes. And I thought, I wonder what this is. So we filled up our packs. Now we leave, get back to the area. We don't know what they are. We opened up that can first. Rock salt. I says, why would they can salt? So I took the knife out and started pounding on the salt. There was fish in there. That's what it was, fish. So we got fish. I says, I wonder what these are. How to get an interpreter. He says, that's oatmeal. I said, oatmeal. And they were compressed oatmeal. And they were about that thick. You know, not very thick. And just like maybe twice the size of an Alka-Seltzer. So this guy got his helmet out, filled it up with water, got a fire started. I think he put 4 of them in there. Pretty soon they exploded, you know. Geez, that was enough for 5 helmets. It was oatmeal.
How did it taste?
Well, with no salt or nothing, you know, I mean, we couldn't use that rock salt. And no flavoring, but it was all right. Yeah. But,
About the fish, was the fish any good?
too salty.
Too salty.
You couldn't get the salt out of it. Boil it and take it out and reboil it and couldn't get the salt out of it. But they had better rations than we had. They had better things at the beginning of the war, you know, because they were prepared for the war. They were preparing for a lot of years. Yeah.
And then the sea rations that you received as a Marine, tell us again what happened with those.
Oh, the sea rations.
Yeah.
The cans.
Yeah.
They used to swell and they'd be rocked, you know. We didn't throw them away because we didn't have no food, so you already got dysentery, you know. So you cut them open and eat it. It didn't make it any worse. Because you know what, on someone like Cape Gloucester, we went in there, when we got out, and we got on the ship, and I weighed myself, I think I was down to around 160, and I was 200 pounds. So you lose, 40 pounds. Yeah. Because when you go in, they give you 9 days rations. And I learned, don't take the heavies. Take the ones that are dog biscuits. At least they don't spoil. And then you might get lucky and get a little can in there of coffee, or some lumps of sugar with it, So I always took the lights. No more of the heavies.
We still do the same thing today.
Is that right?
Yeah, when we have our rations, we take the guys who know take the lighter ones.
Yep. Because they won't spoil, see?
Yeah.
They taste like dog biscuits or something, but they're not bad. So I'd break them up, put some water in there, and make mush out of them, and eat them.
How much of the progress of the war did you know was going on while you were out?
You
I
mean the rest of the world?
Yeah, the rest of the world. I mean, did you know what was going on in Europe? Did you
Yeah,
know what was
well,
going on?
my father sent me the camp repository, but then I'd be gone for 4 months in campaign, combat, and then we'd get to this, like, the Russells, where we had our tent, and they'd be stacked up, and I could read the papers. Yeah, I'd know what's going on in Europe.
So your communications as far as with other people at home, your father, your mother, your brothers, whatever, that was all through the mail, of course. And
V-mail.
V-mail.
You were only allowed to write this much, and they put it in film. And they could put 1,000 letters in a little film, and then develop it when it gets back. Yeah. I had an incident with this friend of mine, let's see, Arthur Murray Jarvis was his name. He came from a wealthy family and he volunteered. He didn't have to go, to the service. So we're in Australia and we haven't got a paymaster, So we're in one of the Australian camps, about 80 miles from Melbourne, way out. No cities around. 20 miles was a little town, Frankston,
when was this?
in Australia.
Yeah, when? What?
Oh, let's see, that'd be first part of 43.
First part 43.
And so we told the captain, hey, why can't we go see that big city, Melbourne? He said, we ain't got no paymaster and we have no clothes. And we had just the dungarees, we fought in. I says, if I can get some money, can we go? He said, yeah. So I got the souvenirs from the guys, and 5 of us, I think it was, marched down to this town, 20 miles away, and sold the flags, carry knives, and all that kind of stuff, And we got enough money, and there was an electric train. And I wanted to see what the cost was, in and out. And boy, we had enough. So we would go back, and we told the captain, hey, got enough money. We can go in and out. He says, okay. So everybody cleaned their dungarees up, put them under their cot, and laid on them to press them. So we were clean, shaven and everything. So we marched down to that town, got on this electric train, went into Melbourne, and then we start walking around, but we didn't have no money. We got the return fare. And so walking all day through the city, you get hungry. And, I was a chow-hound. So I says to Arthur Murray, let's go back to the camp, we can at least eat. He says, let's go a little further. So now I says, no, I finally convinced him. So we're walking back and we're about 10 miles from the train station. And now all of a sudden we get in the poor section, dilapidated buildings and that. And here comes this here captain of Salvation Army. He stops us. We parted so he could pass us. He puts his hand out and stops us. He says, you're welcome. Oh, before that, let me tell this part. Before that, we're in this rich section, and here's this Red Cross building. Big pillars, like Congress, So he says to me, Pete, let's go in and hit him for a meal. I said, no, I never begged in my life. He says, my father donates, now I forget the figure, $20,000 or $50,000 a year to the American Red Cross.
This was,
Arthur Murray Jarvis.
yeah.
Oh, you finally convinced him. We go in and there's a woman, receptionist, right? She sees us, we're not dressed properly. We got dungarees on. So he's talking to her and telling her, he says, listen, my father donates this much to the American Red Cross. Didn't make any difference, they kicked us out. So now we're heading for the train station. That's when I ran into this guy from the Salvation Army. And he says, you're welcome. We went, and it was an old dilapidated building. We went in, and you know, the minute we walked in, the women helpers, I forget what they called them, they didn't let us go through the line. They sat us down at a table, got tablecloth, put it on there, brought the food to us. A difference. So Arthur Murray Jarvis says, I'm writing my father. I'm going to tell him. And I thought it was just a story. I didn't know his father was that wealthy. His father lived in Mount Clemens, Michigan, and that's a big resort in on that. So anyhow, after the next campaign, he gets a letter back. He says, read this. I said, I don't want to read your mail. He says, read it. By golly, his father did donate that money. I don't know if it was 20,000, 40, or 50,000. It was a lot of money, and that was Depression time, boy. It was a lot of money. And he said he was going to donate it to the Salvation Army from now on. And but that is, you run into things.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, the Australian people are nice people, friendly. Yeah.
Like this tape.